Well, hello, beautiful humans. Welcome to my kitchen. I hope everyone is doing great today. Happy Monday. I missed you yesterday. I was taking some very needed time with some loved ones and friends, and I had to take advantage of that while I could. It has been a very difficult ADHD day for me today. From the terrible ideas department, I was like, I know. I will do a live tonight instead. And um, then I realized that I don't really have time to do a live, and so that's why I'm doing it while I'm cooking dinner. So my ADHD has been really bugging me today. I have had a very difficult time staying focused. And so I came up with this terrible idea of doing a live and cooking at the same time. Now, I've done this before, and it was fairly successful. I didn't ruin any food. It took much longer to make it than normal, but um, everything came out okay. So I apologize for any errant noises. As you know, I share my home with children and dogs, and just this is just real life, you guys. But I felt like it was really important to talk about this topic while people still had an opportunity to use the information in a helpful way before the holidays get before we get too much closer to the holidays, because it is Thanksgiving in the United States next week. It is the favorite time of year to get together with family members and have political arguments over turkey and stuffing. So I thought that I would talk a little bit about interacting with family members with whom you have maybe a strained relationship or a difficult relationship, and how to navigate the holidays successfully, even when you have to interact with family members that you don't always get along with. So that was the reason for kind of cramming this together, is because I really wanted to talk about it yesterday, but I was doing self-care. So we are not making mock fast food again tonight. I'm actually making spaghetti and meatballs, which is not a dish that my son likes, so I will also be making him a hamburger. Spaghetti and meatballs is one of my favorites, and I don't do it often enough, so here we are. Um, so things that are important to consider about family and the holidays. First of all, and especially if you're watching this on the replay, where you have a chance to pause it and then come back to it and not miss out on the live experience, maybe um, just take a moment to close your eyes and think about what your ideal holiday looks like. Now, whether you're talking about Thanksgiving or Christmas or New Year's or wherever you are in your holiday planning, where you have to get together with family members, or at least we're going to address that too, where you have to get together. Um, think about your ideal holiday and what does it look like for you? Does it even include family members? I think a lot of times we get stuck in this dogma of like, this is the way that I've always done this holiday. And so I feel like I have to do it the same way again. Um, Also, while I am cooking and talking at the same time, I'm going to set myself some little timers so that I don't ruin the food or the live stream. Lee here, I think this is a great idea. It says maybe do what we do here in Australia, no politics or religion talked about at gatherings. It works here. Well, yes, and I think that's like the general idea for most people. Like those are two off limit topics, but it's not like a hard set fast rule. And I feel like different families have different ideas, traditions, and rules around different things. And not every family is healthy enough to consider the fact that they should just say, okay, we're not going to talk about those things during dinner. And I feel like almost all of us have that one family member who is always going to bring up politics or religion in some form or fashion. I certainly had that when I was married. It was it was like we didn't really intend to talk about politics or religion, but somehow I came up in the conversation or we strayed in that direction because of some other conversation that we were having. And so, um, first of all, I like that idea. I think it's great to not talk about politics or religion at the holidays. But for families who are Mormon, your religion is your entire life, and that's all you ever talk about. So it's kind of impossible to avoid it. And I feel like there are probably a lot of other high control groups that are that way as well. So, anyway, envisioning what your ideal holiday would look like, does it even include your family? I think that's an important consideration because we really should be focusing on doing what is ideal for us anyway, you know? Um, we should be doing the thing that is going to fill up our cups. Holidays should be about celebrating and spending time with the people that we love or just rejuvenating and resting. And I don't think that getting together with family is always necessarily a part of like rejuvenating and resting. So I think it's really important to make that consideration. For me, my ideal holiday is to be surrounded by the people that I love and care about and to have really, really good food. That's all. Um, as far as like Christmas and gifting and things like that, I honestly like I love giving people gifts. It's one of my love languages. It's one of the ways that I show love to people is by really thoughtfully considering what they would like to have and then going out and finding that special little thing for them. I really like doing that. For me personally though, the gift that I like to receive at the holiday is literally the present of someone's presence. I like to be with the people that I love and care about. And I like good food, and those are gifts to me. So, anyway, holiday for me doesn't have to include my immediate family members, my parents, my siblings, my nieces and nephews. There are parts of my family that I love spending time with and parts that I don't. And sometimes we feel obligated to get together with family for holidays because just that's what we've always done. And that's kind of what I was getting around to with the dogma of like the tradition and okay, we always go over to mom's house for Thanksgiving. And so that's what we're going to do regardless. And I think that the midlife revolution is about taking that thing out of your life and examining it and saying, is this still serving me? Is this still what's best for me? Is this the healthiest thing for me? Um, and sometimes it's not. And we need to make a change. We need to make a small change that is going to revolutionize how we feel about holidays and our holiday experience. Because for me personally, there were a lot of years where getting together with my family members and having a big dinner and interacting with them was not healthy for me. And it was not restful and it was not rejuvenating. And when I was a teacher and I needed that time to, recharge so that I could go back to work, um, I made a decision that I needed to do what was the healthiest thing for me. And so I started making rules and creating boundaries. And boundaries are really just like rules of engagement, right? Boundaries are the rules that you make for yourself about how you're going to engage with other people and under what circumstances. I also want to include the idea of self care that, like, doing what is the best, healthiest thing for you is going to better enable you to show up for the people in your life that you love and care about. So, I'm always going to be an advocate for doing what is best and healthiest for you, even if it's not what was traditionally done with family members or what's been done in the past. So, I just want to talk about a few ways that I set boundaries for myself about interacting with family members. And hopefully that will jog your brain a little bit so that you can think about what you need to do this upcoming holiday to make sure that it is a good time for you, that it's what you need and want for the holiday. And that's why I started with the initial intention setting of what does the ideal holiday look like for you? Who are you with? Where are you? What are you doing? And not just go with the dogma of like, we always go to mom's house, we always have a turkey, we always have these other dishes, we always do it at this time, and this is what we do afterwards, and this is how it goes. I think that COVID allowed me for the first time to make considerations about getting away from how we've always done it. And when I got divorced, I finally allowed myself the opportunity to have celebrations that weren't exactly on the day because I wasn't always with my kids on the day. And so it really opened my mind into looking at new possibilities and new opportunities to do things in a different way so that I could enjoy myself and my kids could enjoy themselves and we can enjoy time together and apart and for it still to be enjoyable holiday for all of us. So that's part of the consideration as well. This particular year, my children are going to be spending the day with their father on that day. And so I'm going to be spending the day with my partner and his children on the day. And then the day after, we're going to do what I call Pie Day Friday, where I just invite whoever I want over and we have our favorite foods. And it started because I always make way too many pies at Thanksgiving because I like all kinds of different pies. And there were so many people coming to our dinner. We usually had around 20 people at our Thanksgiving dinner, and they all wanted different kinds of pie. So I would always make 2 pumpkin, 2 pecan, a blueberry, a banana cream, a chocolate cream, a cherry, and an apple. So that's like 9 pies for 20 people, which probably 2 pies would have been sufficient for. But I also like to have leftover pumpkin pie. And I like to be able to send people home with leftovers because it's kind of an enjoyable reminder of the gathering. But then we always had way too much pie. So the next day I would invite people over to just like bring pie, bring leftovers, and let's all have our desserts together and just, enjoy. So it was a way of extending the holiday. So now I do it as a way to have the holiday on a different day and still be able to enjoy all of my favorite people and all of my favorite foods. So, um, just allowing myself the opportunity to enjoy holiday traditions, not on the actual day, definitely helped me to enjoy the holiday times more because I think a lot of us get caught up on, um, who we're with or what we're doing on the actual day is we're not always able to be with our loved ones on the day. And there was one year where I traveled on Thanksgiving and I spent time with, family members in the few days before Thanksgiving. And then I flew home on Thanksgiving Day because actually, of all of the days in that week, it's like the cheapest day to fly is on Thanksgiving. And I was like, I already had my Thanksgiving, so I'm not worried about it. But I decided that I really didn't like that. The airports were pretty empty and it was a pretty stress-free travel day, so that was nice. But even when I'm not with my people that I love on the actual day, I still want the day to be something where I just get to do what I want. So I decided traveling on the day was not something I wanted to do again. So we're going to pause here because my little timer is going off. I was soaking my breadcrumbs, and actually, when I make meatballs or anything that have breadcrumbs in them, I do not use traditional breadcrumbs. I use pork panko. These are fried pork rinds, which makes them a lot more keto friendly. I don't eat keto all the time, but I try to do it most of the time. And I do have a couple people in my life who do eat keto all the time. And so these are a really good alternative to breadcrumbs if you have them in your area. They're just pork rinds that have been turned into breadcrumb material. So anyway, I was soaking my breadcrumbs or my pork panko crumbs, and now it's time for the next step. So I'm going to do that so that I can continue cooking and talking at the same time. Did that, and this is like this is why I said this came from the bad idea department because trying to multitask when you have ADHD, not the best idea, especially when you're trying to make a quality video and a quality meal at the same time. So this is a terrible idea. Thanks for being here with me. Ah, okay, now I'm gonna mix up a bunch of stuff. So I have never grated an onion before, but we're gonna grate an onion tonight. Okay, cool. All right, so I need an egg. By the way, for those of you who were asking, um, I am going to the podiatrist on Thursday to find out the fate of my poor leg and poor foot, that is. Um, we don't, it's definitely not broken. The joints are all intact, but they're afraid maybe there's tendon damage. So that's where we're at with that. Um, anyway, so we were talking about the ideal holiday. What does it look like to you? And does it even involve your family members? And so here's the next part. Um, can we please re-examine the idea that we have to be with our family? I've heard over the course of the last couple of weeks so many times, like, well, we always do X, so I have to do that with my family members. I realize that the first time you make a change in a tradition that you have with your family, that there's going to be some pushback from the people who enjoy the tradition, right? And so maybe the ideal thing looks like compromising. I know that you love going to your mom's house on Thanksgiving, but that's never a good time for me. So I would prefer to go do this other thing. That conversation is really important to have, especially if you're considering a partner or someone else that you're spending time with on the holidays. Um, if you have kids, you'll probably get pushback from your kids where they will say, "Oh, but I really love going to XYZ's house, and why aren't we doing it this year?" And I think a great answer is that this year we're just going to try something new and see if we like it. If it doesn't go well, then we'll do something different. Um, yeah, so I'm trying to read comments as well. So literally, I'm doing three things. I'm making a video, I'm making dinner, and I'm reading comments. Lee here says, I couldn't celebrate a day that washes over the genocide of Native people, but celebrates one day of togetherness. It seems so strange. There definitely is a cognitive dissonance there for so many people because of the problematic history of Thanksgiving, right? But that is a rabbit hole for another time. So, Lee here, thank you for mentioning it, but I'm not going to dig into that right now. First of all, I'm not fully prepared to give a history lesson, although I love doing that. I was certified to teach history um, in the state of Texas, but I never actually got to do it. But anyway, I'm not prepared to do a full history lesson, and I would love to give that its proper credence and its proper attention. So I'm not going to do it today. This is really interesting. Diamond Dave says, never celebrated Christmas or Thanksgiving, personally, not even growing up. That's really interesting. I would love to hear more about that. Um, I think for those of us who grew up in like high demand religions, um, it was not an option to not celebrate holidays because, especially in the Mormon culture, holidays are mentioned even by like the main leaders of the church of what is appropriate to do or not do during the holidays. And so it felt like we were always taking cues from the leadership of the church about how to do certain things, and holidays were one of those things. And so it wasn't like it was never an option. And what's funny to me is like the Jehovah's Witnesses don't I forgive me if I get this wrong. I don't know if they don't celebrate Christmas or if they don't allow certain types of things for Christmas celebrations. When I was a teacher, I had a student who was a Jehovah's Witness, and she was not allowed to sing Christmas songs. And so you can imagine that's pretty problematic in a choir class where we have a Christmas concert. And I started calling it a holiday concert because we also had a large Jewish population. And so I always made sure that we sang some Hanukkah songs and we sang some Christmas songs that were both sacred some that were sacred and some that were secular. So I tried to really be inclusive of all traditions and not traditions. Um, and it's hard from a choir standpoint because like 80% of choral music was written for church and written for Catholic Church mostly. Because if you think about like back in the days in the, you know, 1800s, when a lot of our choral music that we use today was composed, it was for church services. So anyway, it was interesting for me to see a Jehovah's Witness who was in choir and like it was a requirement to requirement to participate in the Christmas concert, like as part of your grade. And so I always had to come up with an alternative assignment for her because she could sit there and listen to us sing Christmas songs, but she herself did not want to sing them. And so I had to visit with her parents about how to navigate all of that. And it was really interesting. Um, and I always also had, side note, like this again, tangent, like this is terrible. This is a terrible idea. We're going to eat dinner at like 12 o'clock tonight. Um, we always had a Bible study day, a Bible story day in choir, because a lot of choral music is also spirituals that were traditionally sung by Black communities, whether it was for holidays or not. It's a it's a very specific genre of choral music. And so I got the opportunity to teach Bible stories in my public school classroom because it was about the genre of the music. And so I always had to do the disclaimer of like, this is not a religious discussion. I'm not presenting this as a truthful story. It doesn't matter whether you believe that the Bible is true or not. It doesn't matter if you're an atheist or what religion you are. This is the story. And honestly, it kind of surprises me how I didn't detach from truth claims earlier on because I got to, as a Mormon person, see Bible stories as this is just a good story. This is just something that teaches people a moral, sort of like Aesop's fables. And it doesn't necessarily have to be literally true in order for it to be valuable or helpful. So it was really interesting looking at it from that standpoint, even when I was a faithful member of the church. So I know that there were lots of students, and I got pushback from parents all the time too about like, oh, you can't teach religion to my kid in the classroom, like separation of church and state. And I was like, nope, this is just purely about a genre of music. And we need to understand the story behind it in order to perform it. Because all music is about telling a story, especially choral music. And you can't really perform it well if you don't know the story behind it. So that was always interesting. Anyway, I digress. Back to the discussion about holiday time and dealing with family members. I think what I was talking about is the fact that so many people say, "Oh, we've always done XYZ, so that's what we have to do. I don't have a choice. I have to show up at my parents' house. I have to." Well, no, you don't. You choose to, right? And all of our choices come with consequences. Going comes with consequences, and not going comes with consequences. And so we have to weigh the consequences of each choice and say, is it worth it for me to experience the negative fallout of this choice in order to gain this other positive benefit? Um, so it's really interesting to have that sort of contemplation, right? And that's what I encourage you to do. And for me, the contemplation was, well, if I don't go to my mother's house for Thanksgiving while she was living here in town, then she's going to be upset and disappointed. She's probably going to make me feel guilty about it. And so that's the negative fallout of that consequence. The positive side of that is that I get to spend the day how I want to. I get to rejuvenate and recharge on my own instead of having the life sucked out of me at a family gathering. And I get to have my own traditions, cook my own food, do things exactly the way that I want to. So, does that benefit outweigh the cost? To me, the answer was a no brainer, like, absolutely, definitely no brainer. it's a better choice for me to experience the negative fallout, because what I learned is that if my mother's an adult, I'm not responsible for her feelings. And her disappointment is not my responsibility to fix. I need to use my energy on giving to the people that I love and care about the most. And if there's an adult that's negatively affected by that, that's not my fault. They are responsible for their own emotions and for their own disappointment. So, um, I like this comment by Lee Hero. Yes, I'm cooking spaghetti and meatballs. He says, I used to go for my child's sake, but once he could choose, it was up to him. And I think we do a lot of things for our kids' sake. What I started to consider was that I can't be a good mother if I go and give all my energy to that family situation. So it's better for my child if I don't. And now it's kind of the opposite for me, in that I chose to back away with my children from those circumstances. And now that they're adults, if they want to go interact with those family members, they're more than welcome to. Right. So, also protecting myself from that negative energy was also protecting my children from that negative energy. And one of the conversations that I had with my parents at one point was that if they wanted to have a relationship with their grandchildren, they were going to have to change the way that they think and talk about certain groups of people, because it is important to my children that people are honored and respected for their choices, even if they're different from mine. And that was the opposite of the messaging that they were getting from my parents. And so we had to have that conversation of, you know, change some things if you want to have relationships with these people. And they did make some really positive, good changes over the last few years, and I feel like our interactions lately have been much healthier. It's like, um, gradually stepping back into things as it feels healthy to do so, and as you are able, as you have the capacity. And what I learned about myself is that the more that I healed, the greater capacity that I had to engage with people who historically had been problematic people for me to engage with. So, in other words, it harmed me for a long time to be in close proximity to my parents because of the way that they treated me and talked about me and talked to me. But the more that I healed, the less that kind of commentary bothered me. And one of the things that I've said before was is that sometimes when we are adults and we tell family stories, or we talk about circumstances that happened in the past, it can be harmful to other people because they experienced it in a very different way. And what I realized was that my parents' cute little anecdotes about interactions that we had when I was a kid seemed funny and charming to them, but to me those experiences and stories were rooted in a lot of traumatic experiences. And so when I healed from the trauma of those experiences, I was then able to hear those stories in a different way again. But we did have to have a conversation between me and my parents that, like, hey, this was really traumatic for me. It wasn't funny. Um, and so now I'm able to hear those stories without being actually emotionally harmed. But that doesn't mean that it is safe or okay to continue telling those stories, because it might be harmful to someone else's experience as well. So I don't know if if the water interferes with you guys hearing things, but please tell me if you're having a hard time hearing things. Um, so, rebuilding those relationships with people after you've created distance, it can be a little bit of a game of testing the fences, right? Because you don't want to dive back into the same dynamics that the relationship had before. You want people to communicate with you in healthier ways and things like that. But it's sort of like dipping your toe in the water to say, like, okay, is it okay for me to, like, now that I've gone no contact with this person, is it okay for me to have a phone conversation? Okay, that worked out all right. So is it okay for me to meet them in person? Okay, that worked out all right. Is it okay for me to go have a meal? That didn't work out very well. That was too much time together. So it's sort of like this gradual try this, try this, try this, and see if it works. And if it's too much, then we back off again. So re-entering those relationships can be tricky. And I don't necessarily think that holiday time is a good time to test the boundaries because it feels really consequential because it's a holiday, and I think the idea is like, oh, we want everybody to have a good time, we want everybody to feel safe, we want everybody to feel accepted, and if things don't go well, then, well, it's quote unquote you've ruined the holiday. I don't know, some of those ways of thinking about the holidays are problematic to me because, like, you can't really ruin a holiday, or at least one person can't really ruin a holiday. um, they can tarnish everyone's experience if they're super toxic and rude and harsh. If there is a really negative experience that happens during the holiday gathering, then yeah, totally just diminishes everyone's experience. But to me, even when something terrible happens, it's like, well, that was a terrible 5 minutes that went by, and hopefully the rest of the day can be salvaged or we can find something to enjoy. Um, so I think that once we set boundaries with family members, um, it's really important for us to remember that we still have to take care of whatever's on our side of the street. And we have to do the work that it takes to get to the point where we heal from the traumatic experiences that we've had, and we learn to not forgive and forget, because we had a whole conversation about that on the channel a few weeks ago, but to use your interactions with them to inform your future interactions. And if you have an interaction with a family member that is not healthy for you and you were not treated with kindness and respect, that's time to back off and set a boundary and say, okay, I'm not going to the family gathering if that person is there, as long as there is this tension and difficulty between us. Um, Diamond Dave, thank you for saying this. It is a nightmare sometimes. It is really hard to try to rebuild, and it doesn't always go smoothly, and it's not a linear process. So what might work one time doesn't work another time, and it's just like a constant. When you have family members who are difficult to get along with, it's very, very hard to um, navigate that relationship no matter what it looks like, especially if that relationship is harming you in some way. So I just want to acknowledge that, yeah, it is a nightmare sometimes. It's really hard. Good for you for continuing to try. Because I think the point for me is that I don't think that cancel culture is a good thing. I think boundary setting is really important, and I think that going no contact for a time is really necessary in some situations, but I don't think that canceling people just because you don't get along is the right way to go about it. I don't think that's healthy, because then we just end up isolating ourselves into an echo chamber. So, I appreciate that you've been trying to rebuild a relationship with your mom, Diamond Dave, and I've been trying to do this, excuse me, the same thing with my parents as well. Lee here says it's really hard when they do not understand or acknowledge the problem and see it as only a you problem. And I agree. And I think when this is the situation, that is one of those times where you go no contact for a time. Because when you approach somebody in an honest effort to try and repair something about your relationship that's not going well, and you say, hey, I didn't appreciate the way that you spoke to me, I felt dishonored, and I would like to change the dynamic of our relationship. And they're like, I don't know why you had a problem with that. I didn't do anything wrong. They try to justify or double down why they treated you that way. Then it's time to say, okay, I see where you're at, and I just don't want to have a conversation with you then. If you're going to disrespect me and then try to make it my fault, I feel like that's unhealthy. So I'm just going to step away. There's also such a thing as quiet quitting, where you don't have to have a conversation with the person. You can just say, well, they treated me with really disrespectful words, and I don't deserve that kind of treatment. So I'm just not going to speak to them again. You don't have to announce it. just don't take their calls anymore, etc. And then you have to deal with the fallout, the negative fallout of like them complaining to other family members that you don't take their calls anymore and things like that. So this is a broad, complicated conversation, okay? And boundary setting is a difficult and complicated problem because it looks different for almost every person, every relationship, every situation. So I just want to say that choosing the thing that is the most loving for you is generally speaking going to be the right way to go about these relationships. And sometimes that looks like isolating yourself for a little while. Sometimes it looks like disappointing other people, which is perfectly fine, especially if they're adults, they can deal with their own disappointment. Um, and yeah, I don't have relationships with anybody in my life who thinks that I'm the problem. I just don't talk to them. I don't engage with them. And as far as family gatherings go, um, here's kind of another, another sort of thing is that like I know where my limit is, and when I've reached it, I am going to excuse myself from dinner. If I go to a family dinner and I'm feeling like things are not going well, or if I'm feeling like I'm being disrespected, or if the conversation is turning to something that is problematic for me, I'm going to excuse myself. And that's not always a popular take. There are definitely people who get upset when you leave early. And again, their disappointment is not my problem. So that kind of brings me to sort of the next point, right? Aside from a discussion with yourself about what your boundaries are and what you need to be doing to take care of yourself for the holidays, also has to be a discussion with yourself of what is safe and what you are going to do and to make a plan and stick with it. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and interact with my family members. I'm going to stay for 1 hour because I know that's my limit. And no matter what's going on, whether we've eaten or not, whether we're in the middle of dinner or not, a middle of a conversation or not, I am going to leave after 1 hour. And if it helps you to have like an excuse or a reason or whatever, I like to tell people that I have an appointment. And I do. I have lots of appointments, but sometimes it's an appointment doing some self-care. Sometimes it's an appointment to go shopping. Sometimes it's an appointment to go get my car washed. The point for me though is that I don't need to explain myself to anyone. I try to let people know in advance. Like, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here. I can only stay an hour. I'm so sorry. I have an appointment later that I have to get to. So I'm just going to be here for an hour and just enjoy the time while I'm here. And if I miss dinner or if I miss dessert or whatever, then I apologize in advance. So that way, when I set myself a timer and when the hour is up, the timer like buzzes on my phone and I just excuse myself. I'm saying, I'm so sorry, everyone. I have an appointment that I have to get to. I've loved being here. Thanks for your time. Hope you guys have a lovely holiday, and leave without any further discussion. um, I wanted to go back to Terry. You had a question. How do you stop a very dominating person ruin a good time? It's so hard to speak and enjoy when I don't meet their expectations they have of me to make the magical Thanksgiving from years ago. Um, Again, this is why I kind of had that discussion about like all of us know somebody who is like the dominating time ruiner in the family. Like they are the ones who have to be in charge. Things have to go their way. And if they don't, they're going to cause a big scene and they're going to be angry at everybody and they're going to, flip tables and upend conversations and everything like that. So I think we just have to have really good boundaries around how much time we're going to spend in the company of a person like that, And if you want your Thanksgiving to go well, or you want your Christmas to go well, again, it's about like, what does that look like for you? And if it looks like spending less time around a person like that, I think that's a fair point. Okay, I have to measure some stuff. So I have to stop talking while I measure because I can't multitask. It's just not a thing I can do. This is half a teaspoon. Okay. And it's like 3 things at once. So I want to be pretty careful about it. And then pepper. Yep, I put in too much. That's okay. It'll be good. Okay. Um, then we're gonna get to grating this onion, which is gonna be an adventure. I'm so excited. I've never done that before. Yeah. So when you've got a person in your life that is that domineering person who is determined to ruin a good time, it's time to say, like, I don't want my whole holiday to be about that person. And so I'm just only going to spend, I don't know, 30 minutes, an hour, however much time is safe for you. And then stick to your boundary, stick to your time and don't allow that person's um, shaming or guilt tripping or whatever it is that they do to interfere with what you want to do to make the holiday special and important for you. So that's how I would handle that, I think. And I'm sorry that you have somebody like that. Um, so Oz, I hope that you were able to tell your mother that you had plans already. I'm sorry, I have plans is another thing that I like to say. And I don't always explain what the plans are because it's really nobody's business what the plans are. And I, as a younger person, felt like I was obligated to justify my choices, especially when they were hurtful to someone else. And I'm just going to say, like, I don't engage in hurtful behavior. I don't condone engaging in hurtful behavior, but sometimes people are hurt because I didn't do something that they wanted me to do. And that's not my problem. I treat people with kindness and respect, and I have good boundaries, and I have priorities that prioritize my self care and the people that I love and care about. And so if someone is hurt by that, that is not my fault or my problem. This is a good question, BS. Why not be honest and say, I've had enough and I'm out of here? That's a great question. I think that it's fine to do that if you feel like that is the best thing for you to do. For me personally, the reason I didn't do that is because my family historically dismissed my feelings and my experiences as not valid. And so, me telling them how I feel about something is not a good experience for me because I know that I'm going to be invalidated and I know that my feelings and experiences are not going to be respected. And so I'm not going to tell them how I feel or why I'm leaving. I'm just going to leave. And I also, I don't I don't want to just be polite, but I do want to be kind. And I don't think that it's the kindest thing for me to do for me to just get up and leave with no explanation or to say how angry I am or to say that this is nonsense and I'm going to leave. So yeah, I don't want to create drama. Um, Gray rock is a great way to deal with people like that. And yes, it creates a lot of drama. Um, I'm just trying to look at comments here, you guys. Thanks for being here and thanks for engaging in this. This is something that I've been wanting to talk about for a long time. And BS, yeah, it's honest, but what the thing that I have learned about truth telling and honesty is that it's not always kind and that there is a time and a place for it. So I'm going to be honest with the people who I know respect my opinions and respect my position as valid. And I'm not going to um, waste my truth telling on people who don't honor me. So I tell the truth to the people who treat me with kindness and respect, and the people who don't, I don't always tell them truthfully how I feel about them or the situation. So anyway, um, there's a lot of religion and stuff side conversation going on that I'm not going to get into because I could go into definitely a rabbit hole situation. Um, so I like this. It just caught my eye. I don't have time for anybody's bullshit. So if the event is going to be stressful for me, I'm out. No reasons are given, and I love that. And I don't always give a reason either. I just say no. No is a complete answer. You don't have to justify or explain yourself. But again, it depends on the closeness of the relationship with the person who invited you or with the person that you're talking to. If you're not close, it's not necessary to give a reason. If you are close or you want to be in the future, sometimes an explanation is a good idea. So you always have to gauge that. Um, thank you guys for being kind and supportive to each other in the chat. I really appreciate it. And I don't know if you've noticed, but we have a new mod. Jen is here this evening, and I thank you for being here, Jen, and giving your time. Irish Jen, I really appreciate that. Uh, I know that I probably have missed a few things, so if I've missed a comment, um, that I need to address, you can always put it back in the chat with some, like, something that makes it stand out visually, because 'cause I'm a visual person. So thank you guys. Well, we haven't put anything in the oven yet, and my sauce is just simmering on the stove over there, so we haven't burned anything yet. But yes, it's dangerous to cook and have rabbit holes at the same time. So, we talked about intentions, the ideal holiday, what does that look for you? We talked about boundary setting, and we talked about a little bit about self-care and making sure that you have a plan and that you stick to your plan and that you have built-in escape hatches for yourself all over the place. And there have been times before when I, have had to manufacture escape hatches before I was really good at prioritizing myself. Um, but now I don't need as many escape hatches. But I used to like set up something with a friend in advance where I would say, okay, call me at 4:30. At 4:30, I'm going to step out and take the phone call, and then I can come back in and be like, sorry guys, I have to leave. But I don't need things like that anymore because I just am a lot more comfortable, um, just saying what I need or just doing the thing that I need to do without having to explain myself. Okay, so here we go, grating this onion. I really hope that it doesn't make me tear up. I've heard that the trick to it, the trick to any onion chopping activity or onion working activity is to keep your mouth open, to breathe with your mouth open, because then the fumes don't get into your nasal passages. And that has historically has worked pretty well for me. This is really interesting though. I wonder why it calls for grated onion. And this is, again, a recipe I haven't ever used before. And so I don't know. We'll find out. Sometimes I do a recipe, like I read the recipe all the way through and I make it. And then at the end, I'm like, that was totally unnecessary. Did not need to do it that way. And I would have done it a different way. But this is what I like adventures in cooking for me is trying new recipes and then tweaking them to be the way that I like them because I'm pretty particular about my food and the things that I make and eat. So anyway, we'll find out if this onion grating was worth it or not. Um, okay, so there's that. I guess maybe it's for the meatball texture. If I had to guess, maybe that's it. So this is like my breadcrumb and milk mixture. The breadcrumbs, well, the panko crumbs were softening, and I'm gonna add that to my egg, Parmesan cheese, grated onion, and fresh parsley. It looks lovely. And then I'm gonna mix in the beef. And this one calls for ground pork as well, but I'm not a super fan of pork flavoring, and so I am just using ground beef. All right, hold please. I shall return in just a moment. Talk amongst yourselves. I'm back. I wonder if there's anybody else on YouTube who does lives and then it's just like, hold on a second, I have to talk to somebody real quick. Probably not. Um, I don't know. I am new to the whole podcasting, YouTubing adventure, and I don't know how it works, so I'm just going to do it my own way, okay? And I am going too slow in this whole process, so I need to do more cooking and less talking. So I'm going to wrap it up, guys, okay? So boundaries, self-care, intention setting, have a plan, build in escape hatches. I do have the talking points written down, so you know, because my ADHD brain would definitely not be able to handle this if I hadn't written it down. So all I'm going to say is that, you know, your individual circumstances are going to vary, of course, and you need to make the plans that are the healthiest for you. And all I can ever do on this channel all the time is to just talk about my own experiences and hope that the things that I have been through they resonate with you and that they give you some ideas on how to handle your own family members. I always say I am not an expert or a trained professional of any kind, other than I am a trained opera singer, but I don't use that skill anymore, really. I mean, I do sing sometimes, but not professionally. And I'm just an expert in my own trauma. And my hope with starting this channel and writing my book and all the things that I've ever done have been an effort to try and help other people who are in the same or similar circumstances. There it is. I was looking for my little quarter of a cup. So that's all I'm hoping, is that by having this discussion, you will think about your own situation in your own family relationships, and that you will get to the point where you choose yourself over someone else's feelings. Because I think way too often, those of us, especially those of us who are kind and empathic in general, tend to subjugate our own needs and our own desires and our own health over other people's. You know, we tend to do so much better at showing up for other people than we do at showing up for ourselves. So I am going to make sure that I do this correctly. Da da da, ba da ba, forming the meatballs. Oh, we're going to broil them. Interesting. That makes a lot of sense, actually. Okay, my goal is to get these meatballs in the oven, and then we will end. So I'm almost at that point, and I was looking for my avocado oil spray, which unfortunately I think I'm out of. Bummer. Okay, we will improvise. So if you guys have any other questions or comments about family member interactions or specific things that you feel like I didn't cover that you want me to cover in this little topic discussion that we're having right here, please go ahead and put them down there in the chat now so that I can address those before we get going. So let's see. Hopefully I haven't missed anything like super, super important. Jen, if I've missed anything important in the chat or there's something that I need to, I just got parsley on my nose. If there's something that I need to address, please, Jen, put it in put it in a comment to me so that I can address it. Okay. So Diamond Dave, thank you. We didn't celebrate. Thank you for calling attention to your comment because I missed it, I'm sure. We didn't celebrate Christmas because my mother is Calvinist and Christmas is considered a pagan holiday. We didn't celebrate Thanksgiving because that's an American holiday. So yeah, definitely different families celebrate different holidays and have different family traditions. And I think it's really important to note that this conversation is applicable to any time that you have to get together with family members. It doesn't just have to be holidays, but for some reason, holidays feel a lot more consequential to people because it's like an event or it's an occasion. And so there's a lot more pressure to do things perfectly or to have the day go perfectly or to have people's experience be perfect. And it's just not possible for that to happen. So I think instead, my focus became, you know, setting the intention of what I would like the outcome to be. I would like everyone to get together. I'd like everyone to have food and enjoy themselves. And then when it doesn't go perfectly, because it never is going to go perfectly, then you can just recall the parts of that did go well and just say, well, I'm glad that 3 out of the 4 things that I wanted to have happen happened great, and the rest of it wasn't perfect, and that's okay. Um, okay. Okay, thanks, Diamond Dave. Um, I'm also navigating this kitchen situation where some things in my kitchen are ideally placed and others are not, and I just make little small changes along the way as I need to. So yeah, perfection is not something that I ever strive for anymore because I know it doesn't really exist. Ah, um, okay, so Michelle P says, my mom won't even talk to me after this election, not sure what to do. Well, I'm sorry, first of all, that you're having to deal with that. Um, but maybe her not talking to you for a while is a good thing, especially if she's willing to jeopardize your closeness and your relationship over politics. Um, Sometimes it is hard to accept when family members um, sort of dismiss us if we disagree with them. And that's why I'm all for like engaging in the conversation and trying to come to an understanding, like, can we love each other even though we disagree about this thing? I hope the answer is yes, especially the relationships that are the most important to us. But I think we also have to acknowledge that not everybody is in the healthiest place and not everybody prioritizes mental health over relationships. Like, that was one of the things I forgot to talk about early on, or talk enough about, is like this idea that it's an obligation to get together. Like, I have to. It's not like just it's not an obligation. It's not an obligation to engage with family members who don't treat you well. And I would argue that if a family member is unwilling to engage with you because you have a certain opinion or a certain view, like, that's really not a healthy relationship. It's kind of like the family members who don't want to talk to me now that I'm not in the Mormon church anymore. It's like the only thing that they valued about me was being a good Mormon. And if I'm not that, then they don't want to have a part of me. And I'm like, that's awful. I don't want people in my life who only value me if I act a certain way, or, if I believe a certain thing. Um, I'm a good person and I'm a freaking delight, actually. And I don't want to be around people who can't see that that's the case, regardless of what I believe or what my political ideology is or how I voted, or, you know, what I think about the Spurs playing basketball right now. It's like, if you're not a Spurs fan, I don't want you at my table. That's terrible. Um, Allow people to have a different opinion and still have value as a human being. So I'm sorry, Michelle P, that you're going through that. Um, if you value a relationship with your mom, it is going to be a conversation that you're going to have at some point with her about the fact that you still want to have a relationship with her even if you guys don't agree politically, and just see how it goes. These things can be really tricky to navigate, and I'm not ever here to give advice, you guys. It's just my experiences and what has worked and not worked for me. And you have to do what is best for you. in your particular situation, because it's going to be different than everyone else, you know. Let's see. Did I miss something that Tiff said that I need to go back and address? Um, yeah, this is a good comment. Um, oh, grating onions makes them cook faster. Got it. I also think that like I think it is too for the texture of the meatballs, because I wouldn't like, you know, even if I dice the onions really finely, they don't always get tender enough like inside the meatball. So I like that. So maybe this is a good recipe. I got it from Bon Appetit, the website, which used to be the big magazine. So um, yeah. My sister's upset over the election. I hope she'll just relax and enjoy the holidays. Well, it would be easier for people to do that if we, you know, showed each other kindness and care. Um, and I don't want to get back into a political thing, because then we'll never get to eat dinner. So, but for those of you who haven't seen it, I did a couple of episodes on um, disagreeing with family members and how to do that or how I've tried to do that in healthy ways. Um, hold on, because if I get this wrong, then I will be in trouble. So, ta-da! I accomplished my goal of getting them in the oven. So guys, like I said, I did the couple of episodes on agreeing with or disagreeing with family members in healthy ways. So I hope that you guys got something positive out of this discussion. Please like, please subscribe, please share it with somebody who needs to hear it. And also, I just want to end by saying that if you're up against a particular problem with family members or holidays and you're stuck and you don't know what to do, I do one-on-one coaching. I also do group coaching, which we're going to have another group session this Sunday morning at 11 a.m. That's the time that we normally do group. I have a bunch of people who are really interested in doing an evening group, but I just haven't set a time for that yet, or a day for that. I'm trying to figure out what works best for my schedule. I'm thinking that probably it's going to work best for me to do group coaching, then episode release, then live afterwards on Wednesdays, because that way my Wednesday kind of gets booked out instead of taking up more random nights. So let me know, especially if you're watching this back afterwards, put it in the comments if you were interested in an evening group coaching, if Wednesday evenings would work for you or not. And I always want people to come to group coaching for free, to try it out, to see if they like it before they ever pay any money for it. So if you would like a link to a free group coaching session, you can email me at megan@third-verse.com. And I would love to also hear in the comments after the live ends, what are your holiday plans? If you have family members that are difficult to deal with, what are your ideas about what are you doing to keep yourself safe and happy and healthy during the holidays? And what are some of the exit strategies that you have? What are some of the boundaries that you have? And what are some of the intentions that you have for your holidays? So I am going to do a live stream on the Wednesday night before Thanksgiving evening. I will be cooking. I'll be getting my turkey ready. And so for anybody who is having to spend Thanksgiving alone and don't want to be alone, bring them to the live stream, or you show up to the live stream, bring a friend. We will have a great chat. We will have a little festive conversation. And that way, nobody has to be alone on Thanksgiving. Well, it won't be the actual day, but guess what? We celebrate every day anyway. So thank you so much for being here. Thanks for your conversation. Thanks for being healthy and happy people in the chat. And this is probably my plan as well. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. I really appreciate it. Now that I'm a full-time podcaster and YouTuber, Every little bit helps. I have a Patreon now that you can go look at. I'm going to start posting e-courses over there. I'm going to start doing more members only lives. In fact, I did one today, and my members only lives are going to be where I sort of brainstorm about my podcast episodes and the things that I'm going to discuss. And so if you want to influence the channel's content, becoming a member and being able to participate in those members only lives is a great way to do that, because then you can contribute and say, hey, I'd like to hear you talk about this thing. So love you guys. Have a wonderful evening, and I will talk to you again on Wednesday evening. Be good to yourself.